Hey everybody, this is Scott Grammer and I am the old audio guy, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about reel-to-reel tape recorders. There are several things that you need to know about reel-to-reels if you're thinking about getting one or if you have gotten one and you want to get the most out of it. And the first thing we need to talk about is track format. Now, track format means this. Imagine that you're looking down the length of the tape as if it was a road. There are lanes on this road, and on a quarter track tape, there are 4 of them, 2 of them going in one direction and 2 going in the other. Now, the 2 that are going in each direction are not side by side. These tracks alternate. So if you think of track 1, 2, 3, and 4, which when the tape is loaded on a machine, track 1 is on the edge of the tape closest to you, track 4 is on the edge of the tape furthest away from you. Tracks 1 and 3 are the left and right channel in the forward direction, respectively, and tracks 4 and 2 are the left and right channels in the reverse direction, respectively. Quarter track tape recordings are the most common kind that you encounter for home use, while quarter track machines are the most common machines used for home use. Now, in between these tracks, there are guard bands, and guard bands are areas of unrecorded tape, kind of like the median in the middle of a highway, and it serves the same purpose. It keeps the sound from one track from bleeding into another adjacent track. These are the machines where you can record in stereo in the forward direction, turn the tape over, and then record again in the reverse direction. That gives you a total of 4 tracks, left and right for the front, left and right for the rear. But there is another track format called half track or 2-track stereo. In this format, there are only 2 tracks, as the name implies, and each one takes about half of the width of the tape. The left channel is on the edge closest to you when it's loaded on the machine, and the right channel is on the edge furthest away. There is a guard band in between. This is the format used in all professional studio stereo recordings, has been since the advent of stereo, which would have been in the early 1950s. Prior to that, there was mono, but we're not going to go into mono because very few of us are listening in mono these days. So with a half-track recording, you can't turn the tape over because the entire width of the tape is used when you record in the forward direction. If you want to be able to buy and play back studio master tapes, you'll need a half-track machine, or if you want to make the highest quality possible home recordings, you're going to need a half-track machine. Half-track machines have better sound quality than quarter-track machines because they use more tape area to record the audio, and this gives a better signal-to-noise ratio. It reduces dropouts, and a lot of people say it just sounds a little bit smoother than a quarter-track tape. I think that smoothness actually comes from the dropout issue. I think that with the wider track width, the lower number of tape dropouts makes it sound smoother. One thing you'll need to watch out for if you're buying tapes from eBay or from some other source that are very old, prior to the standard 2-track recording system that started in the middle 1950s, there was an earlier 2-track recording system that used what was called staggered heads. Let me explain that. Normal stereo reel-to-reels, everything from the mid-1950s forward, has the left and right channel heads in the same package. They're one right atop the other. That's called a stacked head configuration. This has been the industry standard for well over 60 years. But at first, when they first started making stereo tape decks, they did not have stacked heads, so they used what were called staggered heads. You had one head for the left channel and another one, which would be an inch or 2 away down the tape, for the right channel. And what they did is they settled on a standard distance between these 2 heads and made that the standard for a while for stereo recordings, where the left channel was the first head you came across, then the right channel was the second head you came across. And the recordings then had the left and right channels separated by that distance. If you try and play one of these staggered head tapes on a modern 2-track machine, you're not going to be happy because your right channel is going to come out about 1/8 of a second after the left channel. Nobody's going to like that. You could play that tape back and record it into digital and then try to align the tracks, but it's not going to work. So just beware and make sure that any tape you buy says stacked heads, not staggered heads, unless you want to try and find a staggered head machine and make it work. And by the way, this issue does not exist with quarter track tapes. All quarter track tapes use stacked heads, so you don't have to sweat that. However, you do need to make sure that you're not buying a quadraphonic tape unless you have a 4-channel tape deck and a 4-channel system to play it on. So what happens if you try and play a tape recorded in one format on a machine made for another? Let's say you try and play a half-track tape on a quarter-track machine. Now let's assume that the tape is running at the right speed. But if you try and play a half-track tape on a quarter-track machine, here's what's going to happen. You'll hear the left channel just fine. It'll work. The right channel is going to be weak, and the reason is that the right quarter track on your quarter-track machine only gets the edge of the right channel half-track that's on the tape. It's only getting just a little bit of the signal, so it's going to be weak and it's going to be noisy. You could turn your balance control over that way and you could listen to the tape. It's going to work. It's going to be suboptimal. If you try and play a quarter track tape on a half track machine, it gets more complicated. It depends upon whether anything is recorded in the other direction on that quarter track tape. If there's nothing recorded in the other direction, then you can play a quarter track tape on a half track machine. There's going to be some channel imbalance, but you can play it. But if there's something recorded in the opposite direction, you're going to hear that other program playing backwards at the same time that you hear the program you're trying to listen to playing forwards. So obviously that's not going to work. So really you need to make sure that the tape format of your machine and your tape match. Now, I said early on that I wasn't going to talk about mono, but I am going to talk about it for just a moment here. There are some mono tapes you can find out there, or you may already have some mono tapes. Mono, of course, means one channel. And most mono tapes that are out there in the field are half-track mono tapes. This means that one track that would have been used for, say, the left channel in a half-track stereo recording was used for a mono recording in the forward direction of the tape. There could be a second mono recording in the opposite direction using what would have been the right channel's track space. You can play these tapes on either a quarter track or a half track machine. They'll play out of the left channel of the machine. You're better off using a half-track machine because you get the advantage of the better signal-to-noise ratio, but you can play them on either machine. There are full-track mono tapes that use the entire width of the tape, and again, you can use either machine. The half-track machine is going to be better. Ideally, you would have a full-track mono machine to play this tape, but full-track mono tape machines are pretty rare these days. There are also quarter-track mono tapes which have 4 separate recordings, 2 in each direction, and you can play these on a quarter-track machine. The first recordings will come out of the left channel and the second recordings will come out of the right channel. However, if you're going to play them on a half-track machine, which you can do, you need to make sure that there is nothing recorded in the reverse direction. If there is, you're going to hear it playing backwards. So ideally, again, you need to have your tape tracks and your tape machine match. So now that we've covered track format, the next thing we need to talk about is the various tape speeds that quarter-inch reel-to-reel recordings can be made in. There are a number of popular tape speeds. The most popular ones for home use are 7 1/2 inches per second and 3 3/4 inches per second, or 19 centimeters per second and 9.5 centimeters per second, respectively. Simply put, this means how far the tape moves in a second. The faster the tape goes, generally, the better the sound quality is going to be. You're going to get a wider frequency response, and you'll get a better signal-to-noise ratio. The better signal-to-noise ratio doesn't come from the faster tape speed. It actually comes from the different equalization that you're able to use inside the machine when you run the tape faster. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but actually, if you leave the equalization alone, the faster the tape goes, the more noise you have. Seems kind of counterintuitive, but that's how it actually works. Running the tape at a faster speed also allows for less saturation. Now, saturation means that you have recorded as loud a signal as the tape can withstand without serious distortion. And the higher the frequency, the less signal it takes to reach saturation. So at a slow tape speed, you're limited in how loud the highs can be before the tape saturates. So you have to keep the record level down a little bit to keep that from happening. And when you turn the record level down, your signal to noise ratio goes down. Running the tape at a faster speed avoids saturation of the high frequencies and lets you turn the record level up. It gives you cleaner high end. It's a noticeable difference between, say, 3 3/4 and 7.5. This high frequency saturation is one of the serious limiting factors of cassettes because cassettes only run at 1 7/8 inches per second. Running the tape at a faster speed also reduces the sonic impact of dropouts. Now, I mentioned dropouts before, but I did not tell you what they actually are. So let's go back to our earlier description of tape being like a road with lanes. Imagine that you're driving down the road and you hit a pothole. All right, you're going to feel that it's going to be a disturbance in the otherwise smooth motion of your car. A pothole in a road is the same thing as a dropout on the tape. It's an area where there's supposed to be the iron oxide that the tape is recorded on, but some of it is missing for whatever reason, or there's something in the way. Something has caused the recording to momentarily drop out, and it causes a bump or a dip in the recording. Those are dropouts. Now, if you can imagine driving down the road at 20 miles an hour and hitting a 6-inch wide pothole, that's going to cause quite a dip. But if you're driving down the road at 70 miles an hour and you hit a 6-inch wide pothole, you won't feel it as much because the car doesn't have time to respond. The wheel stays up instead of falling down into the pothole and going up. So the faster the tape goes on a tape recorder, the less you hear the dropouts because they just go by too quickly. That's the whole idea. Also, we were discussing earlier half-track versus quarter-track. Half-track tapes are less prone to produce audible dropouts because, let's go back to the road and you're driving down the road. If the pothole is only wide enough that one wheel catches it, that's less bothersome than if it's a dip in the entire road that gets both front wheels. So half-track tape, you might have a dropout that's on part of the track, but it won't be on the other part of the track, so the recording continues. You might notice a little small drop in level, but it won't be nearly as strong as it might have been if you were using a narrower track width like quarter-track tape. So back to tape speeds. What tape speeds do you want your machine to run at? Well, if you're going to play back quarter-track tapes, if you're going to play back pre-recorded tapes that you're buying from eBay or maybe that you've had sitting around for a long time, you're going to want 7.5 and 3 3/4 inches per second. Those are the two speeds that almost all pre-recorded home stereo tapes were made at. The earlier ones tended to be made at 7.5 inches per second, and then the later ones after about 1970 were almost all made at 3 3/4 inches per second. So you're going to need those two speeds on a quarter-track machine to play back these pre-recorded tapes. If you're going to play back studio tapes, then you're going to need to be able to run at 15 inches per second. Now, 15 inches per second became the studio standard speed because of the saturation issue that I mentioned earlier. At 15 inches per second, the level at which saturation of the high frequencies occurs is above 0 VU. It is above the standard record level, where at speeds slower than that, the saturation occurs below 0 VU. Engineers wanted to get the saturation point above the 0 VU level so that they simply didn't have to worry about it. 15 inches per second also gives you less tendency for dropouts to be audible for the same reason that 7.5 is better than 3 3/4. And also at 15 inches per second, any decent tape recorder that's been well maintained can have a frequency response well beyond 20 kilohertz. In other words, higher than any normal person can hear. There are also tapes out there that are recorded at 30 inches per second. 30 inches per second further improves the dropout issue. It does improve your signal to noise ratio some more because of the different equalization used. It's not going to improve the frequency response to the point that you can hear it. It does have a better high frequency response, but you can't hear that high, so it doesn't matter. The problem with 30-inch per second tapes is now it becomes difficult to record low frequencies. This is due to an issue called head contour, and we won't go into that because it's not something you need to worry about with home reel-to-reels. But in any case, at 30 inches per second, the lows begin to suffer, and that's why you don't see tapes running any faster than that. Of course, the faster the tape goes, the more tape you use for a given amount of recording time. So, since tape is expensive, this is why home tapes are usually at slower tape speeds. Also, of course, the more tape you use, the bigger the reels have to be to hold all that tape. Generally, studio machines are going to have the ability to run 10.5-inch reels. These are the large, usually but not always, metal reels, which usually but not always have the large center hole. That large 3-inch diameter center hole is called an NAB Hub. NAB stands for National Association of Broadcasters, and an NAB hub is used because it provides more physical stability for this large, heavy reel, especially when you're running at fast forward and rewind speeds. It keeps vibration down, makes for a smoother tape pack on the reel. Smaller reels, the 7-inch variety and smaller, use the small hole with 3 little wings. This is called a Trident hub, and that's commonly what you see on home reel-to-reels. It's perfectly fine for reels 7 inches and smaller. There are 10.5-inch reels, usually plastic ones, that have the Trident hub. They're okay. They're not optimal, but they're okay. Most machines that can run 10.5-inch reels use Trident hubs on their reel tables, which means that they can play the smaller reels, and when you want to play the larger reels, you use an NAB Hub Adapter, which goes into the middle of your 10.5-inch reel, and then it mounts to the Trident wings on the machine, and you lock it down. This is a compromise, but it does work, and it's very, very common. Usually the only machines that don't do this are very expensive, very high-end studio machines, and these machines allow you to usually change out the reel tables or change out the locks on the reel tables so that you can fit either Trident hubs or NAB hubs or a different type of hub altogether called an AEG Pancake hub. Pancake hubs do not use reels. It has a flange that mounts to the machine. It becomes part of the machine, and then the tape is literally just a pancake of tape with no flanges on either side, and you have to handle them very, very carefully. You don't want to see what happens if you don't. Well, that brings us to the end of today's video, and I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope you've gotten something good out of it. Please subscribe, please hit the like button, and leave a comment in the comment section below. Doing these things helps YouTube to decide to recommend my videos to other people, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.